Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Chad here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we've got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and we are going to be getting into the weeds on a recent case that is going to be taken up by the Supreme Court. Definitely got some really far-reaching implications. It could go either way. We are going to sort of speculate on how we think this could go. There's a lot of conjecture floating around about how things will go, so we'll kind of talk about that a little bit and get you in on this a bit. So it has to do with, and I've got the SCOTUS blog pulled up here in front of me. I'm just going to sort of paraphrase what their website says. And if you guys don't know, usually, I want to say every week, they release like a docket of things that they're going to hear versus what they're not going to hear and their reasoning and everything like that. So this last Friday, they released some statements here on the SCOTUS blog. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett. All right. So Robert Nash and Brandon Koch applied for New York licenses to carry firearms outside the home. The licensing officer denied the request after determining that under New York law, they had, quote, failed to show proper cause to carry a firearm in public for the purpose of self-defense because they did not demonstrate a special need for self-defense that distinguished them from the general public, unquote. Nash, Koch, and the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association asked the Supreme Court to take their case because the lower courts are split over the strength of Second Amendment protections outside the home. Now, if you remember D.C. versus Heller, very important case that shows that the Second Amendment is an individual right, okay? So it's really, really random that the Supreme Court has not wanted to hear so many 2A cases. When you look at all of the types of cases that the Supreme Court has taken over the years, you've seen a lot of 1A stuff, you've seen tons of other things related to all of our other rights, but the 2A tends to get kind of thrown back into this dark corner that they don't want to talk about. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that, right? Mm-hmm. We look at Joe Manchin and all the stuff going on, and they keep wanting to talk about nuking the filibuster, and right now Joe Manchin is standing in the way of that. Mm-hmm. So all of the gun advocacy groups are pushing Manchin really hard to nuke the filibuster and to agree to get in on that, because they know if they nuke the filibuster that they can then pack the Supreme Court. And if they pack the Supreme Court, well, of course, anything that they decide to hear, they're going to have the amount of justices in place that they know they've hand-selected to sort of just pack the Supreme Court as a kangaroo court at that point.
13, 19, 27.
Make it 30, yeah. I mean,
whatever.
That's the danger, right? So that's the holistic view of the situation.
Yeah. I was trying to find something that Clarence Thomas said a little while back about the Supreme Court taking up 2A cases, or I should say the lack of the Supreme Court taking up 2A cases, like, the court's too good to hear those cases, or, the anti-gunners out there, whatever, they don't want the cases heard because they know that a lot of cases, especially with the, majority, okay, the conservative majority that the court has right now, it's a 6-3, conservative majority, and let's just face it, with one justice, John Roberts, who is certainly a rhino, but you still do have a party line sort of vote in the Supreme Court on these cases. But
three years ago, Justice Clarence Thomas charged that the Second Amendment is a disfavored right in this court, unquote.
So they've put so many cases that pertain to the Second Amendment out and pushed them back to the lower courts, and they basically just said, well, the Supreme Court's not going to hear this and they're not going to rule on it because we're not going to set precedents. Well, they have agreed to hear this case. So this case was granted what's called certiorari. I hope I'm saying that right, but they will hear the case at some point in the future. We don't know when, but we'll keep you guys abreast of it. But the left, let's just face it, okay, the left, like Schumer, Pelosi, all these leftist elitists, they want to see the court packed in their favor. When things don't go their way, they just go into a corner and cry about it. And they just think, what can I do? Well, let's just see if we can pack this court. Let's see if we can get the filibuster removed so we can get what we want done in the Senate. It doesn't work that way. Things aren't just a party line vote when it comes to the entire country. There are a lot more people out there that don't agree with one side or the other. They sit more toward the middle on a number of different issues. Okay. And gun rights is an issue that's shared by both sides. I mean, let's
They
just
are
face it.
for or against it whenever it suits their fancy and whenever they think it will benefit them.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? And that's the issue. It's all about the ends completely justify the means, no matter what the legality, constitutionality, morality, anything that you could completely even think about. They are completely willing to cross any moral line necessary to get their end result.
And let's see, this particular case, now there was another case that was put in by the New York State Pistol and Rifle Association that had to do with something regarding the SAFE Act. We covered it in a previous video, but this is pertaining to concealed carry licenses being denied in the state, and whether or not the state has that right and whether or not it's against the constitutionality of the Second Amendment as a whole. So this could have far-reaching implications. We always use that term. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, anything, okay, that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of or against, okay, a Second Amendment case, it will have far-reaching implications. And we don't know how this case will go. We can speculate based on the makeup of the court, but we do have a new justice, okay, well, a couple of new justices, but especially Amy Barrett. She has gone back to previous statements and like dissents and such by such as Antonin Scalia. She hasn't really answered in her own words. She has just deferred back to previous rulings on cases such as like Heller and such. So we don't really know where she would stand on something along these lines. We can only assume and speculate. But the odds are certainly in our favor.
All right.
Overall.
So there's a couple of things to consider that maybe on some of the other takes that you've gotten on this particular subject, maybe you've watched some other videos. And I would suggest watching other videos on this subject because like Jared over at Guns and Gadgets goes into some great detail and he's extremely well qualified to discuss this type of stuff as well. I'm not saying I am, but hey.
Are we really qualified?
This is an opinion. All right, this is an opinion, but all right, here's a couple of takes that maybe you didn't think about. Maybe people aren't thinking about. All right, one is the fact that a lot of states, when we compare the way that carry laws have changed in this country from like the 80s till now, right? I think there's this interactive map that you can pull up on Google and look at it, and it'll show like the states that have like may issue, shall issue, and then the constitutional carry. And it's quickly becoming apparent that many states are adopting constitutional carry, permitless carry in their states. So one, you see that there is a willingness for states to adopt constitutional carry. So that right there shows the direction that people want to go with the laws and things because they're pressuring their lawmakers to enact constitutional carry. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is, all right, even if a state is a may issue state, right? All right, so New York, right? The city of New York in this situation may issue, right? Oh, you have to have a valid reason. Okay, well, here's the thing.
You're being chased by a motorcycle gang of bears.
Right. Okay, It doesn't matter what the reason is, but here's the issue. You can't tell one person that they can carry a gun and then tell another person that they can't, right? Because it's the way that these laws work. And you got to think, things are done in the spirit of what they are, right? So if you can, all right, if there is a licensing scheme, all right, now, granted, a very unfair and what we would think unconstitutional licensing scheme, but at the end of the day, it's a license, right? And if it's issued, then that tells you right there that there is some willingness for people to be able to carry firearms, right? Like if there wasn't there is a such thing as a carry permit. As much as I disagree with it, I think that every state should be constitutional carry 110%. I think you ought to be able to put a gun in your holster and drive from, coast to coast and be able to protect yourself while you're out on the road. But here's the thing, permits exist. So if the government, from a holistic point of view, whether it was state governments, whether it was the federal government, whatever, right? If the spirit of the law and if the spirit of a licensing situation wasn't so that someone could carry a gun, right? That's the whole point, is so that you carry a gun out in public. I don't agree with the licensing system, but you can't say, okay, well, if you have a permit, you can carry a gun. Oh, but by the way, we're not going to give you the permit because we don't want you to carry a gun.
You don't have a valid enough reason.
That goes completely against the spirit of why the Second Amendment even exists. So I think that they would be really hard-pressed to look at this from any other situation. When you see the advent of all of the constitutional carry states that are popping up left and right, all of this cry from many people, including myself, to have constitutional carry throughout the entire country. All you got to do is look at the data and look at who wants constitutional carry and the states that are getting it. The writing is on the wall that people want to carry guns. They don't want any licensing bullcrap to deal with. All right. Are there any states and municipalities that have a, shall not issue of any type of carry permit?
There's no issue states out there. I mean, where you just can't get a carry permit. Like, I don't think you can get a carry permit in Hawaii, for example. I might be wrong, but I'm almost 100% sure that you can't get a carry permit at all in Hawaii.
So if the Supreme Court decides, I guess what I was getting at, if the Supreme Court ends up saying, hey, you can't do that, it's unconstitutional to require someone to have some type of special license to protect themselves wherever they might be.
Look, so the way that I read into this, all right, this case, all right, it's not, from what I understand, it's not about the constitutionality or the unconstitutionality of whether or not a licensing scheme is constitutional or unconstitutional. All right. What it's referring to is whether the state can deny you that application to that carry permit, when you are a law-abiding person and there's no other reason other than just you're not the right person. Because we see in a lot of these states that may issue that the elites, superstars, famous people, or those in the know, friends of people in power, they're able to get these licenses, but normal Joe Blow can't.
There's no other reason except you're not connected.
You're not. I mean, that's the easy way to put it. You're not a connected person, so therefore we don't know you. We're not going to give you that license.
But I think the meat and potatoes of the situation, though, is when you look at the Supreme Court and you look at this ruling, it could have some pretty far-reaching scenarios, right? I mean, the lower courts, are split over the issue, or they don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I think that you look at the Supreme Court, they have traditionally not wanted to have the compass pointing at them in regards to something related to 2A, because they know how political of a subject it is and how political of a matter it is. And they've even said, like, when we look at some of the recent things that happened with, like, all right, for instance, the impeachment trial with Trump, the issue with the fraud and everything, all of these claims of fraud with the election and everything. The Supreme Court even said, hey, we're saying we don't get involved in politics. Y'all have to sort that out.
They don't get involved in matters pertaining to elections.
Right.
Is pretty much what was put out there.
But they've also looked at the Second Amendment in that type of view, too. Yep. So Clarence Thomas is exactly right. I mean, if it's something that's important to Americans, right, the right to bear arms is pretty freaking important. It's important to me. It's important to you. It's important to a lot of people that are coming out of the woodwork and becoming gun owners for the first time. And trust me, they want to protect themselves, right? So I think it's clear that because the Second Amendment is so important to so many people, it would be nice to see the Supreme Court actually solidify our rights and finally put some of this stuff to bed so that we can stop playing political hockey over our rights. Like, it's one thing for something to be political. Oh, well, we don't get in the middle of politics. The Supreme Court doesn't get in the middle of politics. Well, be that as it may, it doesn't change the fact that gun rights aren't political. All right. They can say that it's political. Some talking head at a news organization or on social media can go, oh, well, we don't like, you shouldn't talk about guns because that's a political hotbed of controversy. Well, to you it is. But my rights are absolute. My rights say exactly what they are, right? So it's not political. It is the most unpolitical right there is, because it tells you that it shall not be infringed. So I don't understand all of this conjecture about, oh, well, we have to make this decision and all this. Well, no, you don't. It says shall not be infringed. I mean, I don't understand how it could be taken any other way. It's not political. It's the one thing that the founding fathers said, hey, you can argue about whatever you want, but not this. This shall not be infringed. This is a line in the sand. You can't do this. You can't touch this. Like MC Hammer.
Oh my God.
I mean, but look.
Where are my hammer pants?
But that's the thing. It's not political, but they have created an environment where they claim it's political, but they're really not. It's not.
So in the simplest terms, this case is quite important, because it is the first Second Amendment case that has been heard by the Supreme Court in a very long time. And as we mentioned, yes, it can have far-reaching implications one way or the other. And remember, guys, like this is not what I would consider a small step. This is a pretty large step. Okay, if this is ruled in favor of liberty and constitutionality, okay, and freedom overall. But it's still just one little chip, okay, at getting our rights back as a whole. I mean, yeah, states have their own laws, okay, states' rights, all right? So you can go to one state and they can tell you, okay, well, we have very strict carry laws and whatever, you have to apply for a license. You can go to another state, okay, they have constitutional carry. If you're a law-abiding person, you can just carry a gun wherever you want to without a permit. Okay, hey, cool. Well, until we get something like national reciprocity, that's another stepping stone. That's another chipping back away at the gun control that's been shoved down our throats, right? So that's a way to get things back. All right. National reciprocity is, or national constitutional carry would be even better. All right. But some of these laws or some of these bills have been put in place, but they haven't gone anywhere. I mean, we always go back. I always go back to Paul Ryan, all right, during Trump's first couple of years when conservatives, so-called conservatives, had control of the ship. It seemed that we were going to get some pro-gun legislation passed, and it didn't happen. After the Vegas shooting, Paul Ryan pulled the SHARE Act from consideration, and that was kind of the stepping stone downhill. Like, we started rolling downhill after that, and we lost any momentum that we had gained up to that point. And if we get some momentum with the Supreme Court victory, then that could maybe set a little bit of things in motion for like the midterms. Say we get the House back. Say the Senate flops, and we get it back, whatever the case is. And, Biden would have a harder time of getting anything that he wants to passed. And then, 2024 rolls around. Who knows? Maybe we'll be on the uptick again to try to get some of these things back that have been denied us for many years. Some of you on Twitter might have saw where I published the letter that I wrote to Legina Lombardo, the acting director at ATF, back when the whole brace thing was going on. And I published an opinion letter that I sent to her. And it's in the register, like it's legit before they close down the comments. That was on braces?
It was on braces, and I actually referenced a lot of Supreme Court cases, in there, just to prove my point and try to solidify my opinion, or at least have a bit of a researched opinion, okay? So let's look at Mayberry versus Madison. All right, this is a Supreme Court case.
How can you read that?
A law repugnant to the Constitution is void. Okay. So the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, period. Okay? Any law that goes against the Constitution is not a law. It is void. And that is a Supreme Court case, okay? So we look at Mayberry versus Madison, and then there's also, I don't have it pulled up in front of me because I'm woefully unprepared, and I'm not even going to try to quote it, but there's another Supreme Court case that had to do with polling taxes, all right? And they ended up determining that you can't tax a right. So here we are, sitting in this moment right now, where I have to pay a $200 tax stamp to own a suppressor or a machine gun or short-barreled rifle or any type of thing that they deem naughty that's on their list of naughty things. I have to pay a $200 tax stamp. It is a tax. It is a tax. When you get it, it is a stamp that says tax. It is a tax. You are taxed to exercise your rights. So again, when we get into the weeds of constitutionality and when we get into the weeds of what the Supreme Court can or may not eventually discuss and maybe come up with a ruling on, this sets forth a really good precedent so that, all right, let's say that this case gets heard and they end up siding with liberty, which we all hope is going to be the case, all right, then maybe we can go and look at the older Supreme Court case regarding the polling taxes and go, well, wait a minute. The Supreme Court said a long time ago that a poll tax is illegal, that all laws repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. What are we doing here? Why do these gun laws exist when the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed? So every law that exists to infringe on your gun rights is null and void. The Supreme Court's already determined all this forever ago. We're just sitting here and allowing it to happen. So I would like to see an environment where the Supreme Court will show solidarity with decency, solidarity with morally just people who have every right to protect themselves. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, any color in between, whatever. I don't care if you're a polka-dotted purple alien. If you live in this country and you want to protect yourself, you should be able to do it as a citizen.
What if I'm a people eater?
Well, then you don't need a gun because you're a people eater. But
I guess
anyway, I mean, it's all there. When you look at all the stuff that's gone on and the Supreme Court cases that have already been, ruled on, there's a lot of stuff out there in the weeds already that the Supreme Court's already shown that laws that are repugnant to the Constitution are void. It says it right there. So if that's a Supreme Court case, and if they've already determined that a long time ago, why are we here? Why are we even having this discussion right now?
Well, because the cases that the Supreme Court could rule on to put that sort of thing into our favor have not been created, or they have been created, and then they were not granted certiorari or whatever.
They won't hear it.
They weren't heard. I mean, but the poll tax thing is a legitimate argument because everywhere in the NFA it states tax, tax, tax. Even in the code of the United States, it is referred to as a tax. It's not referred to as a fee. This is how Obamacare was deemed constitutional. It's because the tax that you would be penalized with was not considered a tax. It was considered a fee. All right. It's just...
So all these woke people out here that are all civil rights this and civil rights that and all this mess, look, they don't even understand that the Supreme Court already went to bat on this issue a long time ago, right? So when you look at, Harper versus the Virginia State Board of Elections, 1966. Wow. So what was going on in 1966, y'all? Does anybody know? Well, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? The civil rights movement and all this mess going on. It was a really trying time for this country, right? So let's look at it under that lens, right? We want to talk about gun rights and how we want to solidify gun rights for all people, no matter who they are, right? So, all right, let's look at this. Harper versus the Virginia State Board of Elections. Remember, 1966, the Supreme Court determined this. It was a case in which the Supreme Court found that Virginia's poll tax was unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So you can't tax a right. You have the right to vote. Everyone. Man, woman, child, black, white, doesn't matter. You have the right to vote. You can't tax someone on the right to vote. You can't create a polling tax. So if you can't tax the right to vote, why can you tax the right to bear arms? And why hasn't the Supreme Court heard it? I keep asking the question. I keep talking to every lawyer I know, and they just shrug. Well, why are we shrugging? Like, the Supreme Court's already determining this crap a long time ago.
Why didn't we get the SHARE Act passed and see suppressors removed from the registry? And why wasn't there further legislation put into place and passed to nullify the NFA as a whole as unconstitutional? I mean, why, when there was control of the ship, why did these things not get passed? That a large base that votes these people in, wants to see done. Or is it the case that the base really doesn't care about those things that are done? They just vote a certain color and then they go home and go about their business. I mean, which is it?
Yeah.
I mean, do people really care or do they not?
They claim that, if there's a D next to your name and you voted this way, that you support this, and this. That's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of people that aren't one-issue voters, right? Gun rights might not be a super hot button ticket for them to vote one way or the other, but when it comes down to getting in the weeds of whether or not they want their guns taken away, they dang sure don't want their guns taken away. So that gun ownership has become very much a multi-aisle type of thing, right? There's people on both sides of the political coin that appreciate and support gun ownership. So I think that turning it into a political type of thing I think these politicians are finding out it doesn't work for them. Like, it's not something that you can build a platform around being anti-gun anymore. And I think you're going to wind up seeing a lot of dinos, just like you see rhinos. Like, these parties start to kind of blend together, and it becomes, who is who? Does it really matter what party you vote for anymore? They're really all just looking for power, and they're completely willing to look the other way on anything that you support. As long as they don't like it, they don't care. And there's Republicans that aren't necessarily pro-gun, just like there's Democrats that are openly anti-gun. It's like you can't win no matter what. When the Republicans control the ship, they do nothing. When the Democrats control the ship, they pretend they're doing something, knowing that nothing's going to happen. It's like, either way, you're not going to get anything for or against it. It just becomes this moment in time, and you're just stuck living in it.
Well, I know something that's going to be entertaining to watch over the next year and a half is the battle for the House of Representatives during the midterms, because with the new census data, this is something that's pretty interesting I read about the other day, but with the new census data that was finally published, New York and California both lost House seats because their districts shrunk, because of people fleeing the states. And, I hate to say it, but in New York, there were, a lot of casualties from COVID due to a lot of mismanagement by the, powers that be there. And I think it was like...
There's a lot coming out about that, too.
Yeah, 89 people is what the threshold was for the retention of one of the districts there where they lost a House seat from. Now, Florida gained a seat. North Carolina gained a seat. And I think there were 3 other red states that gained seats. So the power is definitely starting to sort of shift in that direction, right? But the midterms are going to be interesting. I mean, California, a lot of people had to flee California for them to lose a congressional seat, which is wacky.
And then you look at the recall of Newsom.
Yeah.
That's got enough signatures now. So now they're going to have a recall election for Newsom.
But, all right.
That just goes to show you how much people disagree with what's going on. It's not some fringe group that's deciding, we're going to go against this holier-than-thou person that we support wholeheartedly. When you look at Newsom's Twitter page, for instance, it's like 90% of it is all people that just think he's a dork and that they don't agree with him. So...
well,
when a politician tells you, the vast majority of Americans support gun control.
Did you notice who was planning to run on the Republican ticket in the recall election?
Who?
Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
As a Republican, look, hey, whatever. Look, we had Arnold running as a Republican in California as well. At one point.
Yep.
But. I
don't think it's fair to write California off, though.
No.
Because there's a lot of people in the state that are really good people and really wholesome folks, and they love freedom and liberty just like the rest of us, and it's not their fault that they've got a turd government.
Man, dude.
I know.
That's a whole nother story for another day, man.
I think so. The takeaway from this video, keep pressure on Manchin. Mm-hmm. Make sure that he doesn't cave on the filibuster, because that's important. Because if they cave on the filibuster, they can pack the Supreme Court. You don't want them doing that. So keep pressure on Manchin. Contact your reps. Make sure that they understand where you're coming from on this. Pay attention. Be involved in your community. Get out and change people's minds. Talk to them. Tell them why it's important to show solidarity for our rights. Convince people to go out and buy a gun and arm themselves and carry a firearm. And, and then get their buddies to do it. So once it becomes a cultural change, when you change the culture, you change the laws. And honestly, I would encourage you to look up that Google map that I was talking about that shows the change of carry laws over the last 30 years, right? I think it goes back to 1986 or something like that. And you can see clearly the culture is changing because the laws are changing, right? There's a literal map that demonstrates that process happening in real time. As the years, you see it tick by, and you see the amount of states that are red are the ones that are the constitutional carry. And we have, I think, constitutional carry is in almost half the states now or more. So it's quite a few. There's a lot of that map filling up with constitutional carry states. So that's something to keep an eye on. And as the culture changes, as will the laws. So I think that's a really important thing to consider and keep in your mind and make sure you're being active on. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. This is just an opinion, guys. We're not a legal authority. Okay. How many?
18.
Okay. So a little less than I thought, but certainly a good start. We want to see constitutional carry become a nationwide thing. So I really appreciate y'all watching. We hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for listening. Again, not a legal authority. This is just my opinion and Chad's opinion. Take it for what you will. The writing's on the wall. You look at the Supreme Court cases that have already happened. You have to assume that this will go the way we want. But don't sit on your hands. Get out there and be active in your community and get people involved and make sure you're talking to your reps and just yelling it out from every end that you possibly can.
Yell it nicely.
Yes. All right. Have a good day, guys. Thanks for watching. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.